Hi, my name is EJ Massa. I've been looking to get my hands on the Blackmagic Micro Cinema Camera. It's a tiny version of the Blackmagic Pocket, but it ditches the terrible screen, it has 60 frame per second mode, and it has a global shutter mode. However, at the time of this filming, Blackmagic has yet to ship it. I think it was supposed to ship at the end of last year, then the website said it was shipping in January, and then January came and went, and it said it was shipping in February, and now it's March, and that fucker still hasn't arrived yet. This isn't the only camera they failed to ship. It's a chronic problem with many of their cameras. So I'm forced to review the dumpy brother of the Micro Cinema Camera, the Blackmagic 4K Micro Studio Camera. What the hell is that? It looks just like the Micro Cinema Camera. What makes it so different? They might share a similar body, but the Micro Cinema Camera basically has the same sensor as the Blackmagic Pocket, which films 1080p with a base ISO of 800. The Studio Camera has a completely different 4K sensor, but the base ISO is more around 200. The Micro Studio Camera is different in another way in that it doesn't record internally at all. It only outputs a clean 4K signal via SDI and a 1080p signal through the HDMI. This camera is obviously designed to work in a studio setting with like a switcher or something. But you can pair it with an external recorder like the Atomos Shogun and use it like a cinema camera. But EJ Massa, you goddamn ugly simpleton. It's called the 4K Studio Camera. Why are you trying to jam a square peg into a round hole? And you're trying to review it as a cinema camera? That's not right. It's not right. I do what I want. Now, if you excuse me, I'm gonna jam a square peg into a round hole. I did it. You probably thought this when you saw the two cameras. You were like, well, one's 1080p, records internally, the other's 4K, records externally. I already have an external 4K recorder. 4K is better than 1080p. I know that because Panasonic told me in their TV commercials. I'm a dumb consumer. Well, you know what? Let's find out. Construction-wise, it's just a Micro Four Thirds mount attached to a very solid metal ball. It's very small. Here's a Blackmagic Pocket for scale. Here's a banana for scale. Here's an alcoholic for scale. It's so small. Why does a studio camera even need to be that small? Well, maybe you have a small studio. Or maybe your studio is in your neighbor's bedroom and you hid the camera on their nightstand. It won't be very hidden because you have to run a bunch of wires to it, and with a base ISO of 200, you won't be able to film anything with the lights out. Which is when all the good stuff happens. Am I right, guys? Ladies? A big plus is that it uses standard Canon LPE6 batteries, which is way better than the tiny Nikon batteries that the Blackmagic Pocket used. And the Canon batteries are much more plentiful in the market because many devices use them. The battery life is a few hours, which is much better than the 20 minutes that the Blackmagic Pocket gives you. Or the 20 minutes that EJ Massa can give you. It's got some buttons to access the menus, but to actually see the menus, you have to use a monitor through the HDMI output. It's important to note that the HDMI only has a 1080p output. To get a clean 4K signal, you have to use the SDI output. You will not be able to use the menu from the SDI outputs, and to record 4K, you need a 4K recorder with SDI inputs like the Atomos Shogun. Just as a side note, I reviewed the Ninja Assassin before, and the only difference I can see between the Ninja Assassin and the Shogun is that the Shogun has SDI inputs in addition to the HDMI inputs that the Ninja Assassin has. And the Ninja Assassin has that orange cover thing, which doesn't really do much anyway. You can watch the review for the Ninja Assassin here, but for the 4K studio camera, you will need the Atomos Shogun. Actually, as long as the menu isn't engaged, you can record 1080p out of the HDMI inputs of the studio camera. I forgot to switch to SDI while playing with the settings, so I accidentally recorded this. It wasn't 4K because I forgot to switch the recorder in the Shogun menus. I recorded this scene by accident through HDMI. I forgot to switch to SDI while playing with the settings. It wasn't 4K because I forgot to switch the recorder in the Shogun, so I accidentally recorded this. The fucking key fell out. What the fuck? But it does record. I am a robot. The robot is me for some reason. I recorded. Play Phantasy Star 4 on the Sega Genesis. What am I doing? The edit is getting way too complicated. Okay, so there's a headphone jack, an external mic jack. It also has an expansion port, so you can plug in expansion packs, like Diablo 2, Lord of Destruction. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. I'm smart. As for settings, you can output 4K, and various 1080p modes. You can also increase the gain on the sensor, but I wouldn't really recommend it. It quickly becomes a noisy mess, so I'd leave it at 0. You need the HDMI menus to set the color temperature, and then you can switch to SDI to start filming in 4K. The form factor is actually quite fun when it's all set up, and I had a lot of fun filming with the tiny camera and the recorder. It's good. One thing to note is there's no option to output a log signal, unlike the Blackmagic Pocket, which has a film and video setting. The studio camera only outputs a punchy and contrasty image. Maybe the sensor can't handle a log profile. Here's a shot in the Pocket where I exposed for the sky. And here's the studio where I did the same, but you can see the camera really wanted to put me in the shadows. So the camera doesn't really have good dynamic range. It wants to crush the blacks, and with an ISO of 200, you need a lot of light. With all that said, the colors coming out of the thing are really good. I always like the colors on the Blackmagic cameras, and I think the color science here is just as good. I love the skin tones, and the statue tones, and the bear tones. You see what I did there? That's almost a joke. Because baritone singing. I didn't notice any crazy aliasing or moire. From my experience, the color temperature seems to run a little cooler than the Pocket. But it might just be that the camera's image is fundamentally more saturated, so I notice it more. If you want to use this camera effectively, I'd avoid high contrast scenes, and make sure that everything you film is properly exposed. If it looks dark on the screen, you might not be able to recover it. If you get the exposure wrong, you could be in trouble. Honestly, for the money, you could get a GH4, which, takes pictures, records 4K internally, it has a log profile option, you can output 4K 422 10-bit via HDMI, and if you really need SDI inputs, you can get that ugly adapter, which you can probably find in a fucking dumpster. Bottom line is, the image coming out of this camera is beautiful, but you need to have a controlled and properly lit environment, almost like a studio. Oh wait, that's probably why Blackmagic called it the Micro Studio Camera. Jeez. Good job naming your camera, Blackmagic. Now all you have to do is release a fucking camera on time. Seriously, I have some advice for you, Blackmagic, from EJ Massa. Unsolicited advice from the smartest man in the country, maybe even the world even. How about before you announce a camera, you make a ton of them, so that when people want to order them, you can send them out right away. Then people won't be disappointed when you fail to ship to them over and over and over again. Because I like your cameras, I love the colors, I think the Blackmagic Pocket is the best image you can get for that price. Even that dumpy little studio camera has some good things going for it, if you're into that kind of thing. You're innovating in neat ways and you're keeping your competitors on their toes. And you gotta figure your shit out. You gotta figure your shit out. And send me a micro cinema camera and a 4.6K mini Ursa. You send those to me, I'll forgive you. Because I matter. I matter. Hey guys, we got some things here. You got a box mag here, you got an EJ review. And here's also a video I shot with two Blackmagic cameras. I used the Blackmagic Pocket for the wide and the 4K studio camera for the close-up. So check that out, Blackmagic Cameras, real life situation. And check out in the description below, there's a playlist with all of my reviews. You can check them out because they're not all on this channel, they're on a bunch of different channels because I'm an idiot. Alright. Well, just Just go, bye. But EJ Massey, you goddamn ugly the fucking pig, you dummy. That's obviously a studio camera. It's the 4K studio camera. Why are you trying to jam a square peg into a round hole? I said that perfectly, didn't I? I did. I do what I want.